What do you do when you're already doing well and want to go next level? And what happens when you realize there's more to life than just making money? Is it time to move on? Or is there a way to combine purpose, profit, and even philanthropy? Well, you're about to meet a Main Street capitalist who's finding the answer with the help of an amazing mentor. So stay tuned for lots of lessons in this conversation with real estate entrepreneur Mike Special and his mentor, Rich Dad Poor Dad co author Sharon Lechter. Welcome to the Main Street Capitalist Show. I'm your host, Russell Gray. I'm here in studio today with a couple of special guests that you're really going to love. The first one is a builder from the great state of Texas in the city of Austin, and you're going to love his story. It's a very inspiring Main Street capitalism story. And the other guest is the person who introduced me, a lady I'm sure you all know, and I'll introduce you to her first. Her name is Sharon Lechter. And Sharon, you may know, is the co-author of the classic book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad with Robert Kiyosaki. But she's got a whole lot more that she's involved in. And one of the things she does is she mentors Main Street capitalists. So Sharon, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much, Russell. I'm delighted to be with you.
Yes, had you on the Christian Capitalist Show for more than a couple of episodes, I think, and we had some great conversations. So I wanted to share you with this audience. So we're going to come back and find out a little bit about you, but I want to introduce everybody to Michael real quick. Mike, Special. And so you're our special guest, like you've never heard that before.
Yes, it definitely stands out like a sore thumb.
Yeah. So, Michael, let's just, I want to talk a little bit about you, and then we'll come back to Sharon and her role in your life. But tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing right now.
Absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity as well. Again, name's Mike Special. I live in Austin, Texas. I've been there since I was about 12 years old. So well enough to be called native in comparison to everybody else that's moving there. I started a construction business at the age of 24 and was one of the youngest builders in Austin at the time. And I'm currently 51. So I've been doing it more than half the span of my lifetime. I do what I love. I'm a firm believer in what I do in the trades, in the fields, in the trades. And it's something that I push and would love other individuals to do. To wrap it up in a nutshell, I'm also a serial entrepreneur. I love investing in other companies and other people more than anything.
So you're a real estate guy. You build real estate, you sell real estate, you raise capital to help people invest in real estate. And there's a bit of a mission in there. And so we're going to come back and talk about that in a moment, because what I'm really interested in for the people who are out there on the front end of a journey who say, hey, that's pretty cool. How do I go from where I am and become that? And so you have a relationship with Sharon in your life right now. And tell us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. You know, Sharon came through a small group of friends that I was actually blessed to be introduced to. In all of my life, I've never had a true mentor. I came from the school of hard knocks, essentially. So try it. If it doesn't work, try something else. And I never really had that person to be able to bounce something off of or to say, am I on the right path? Should I look somewhere else? And again, when you're in business, a lot of times you leave blinders on and you just do what you know to do. And it takes that other person to give you that 30,000 foot view to give a different perspective. And Sharon's been tremendous as a mentor to me to help me do that and look at areas of my life, business, personal, to look at things from a different lens. And so it's been tremendous for me to have someone like that in my life.
You know, we hear about the concept of mentorship all the time, and sometimes people think a mentor is a teacher, and they are, but it's a method of teaching. The way I approach it is that when you sit down in an academic setting, you are going to be taught things from people, hopefully who've been there, done that, and give you a preview of things that you may experience in the future. A mentor is somebody who is there when you're stuck and helps you get unstuck. That's the way I look at it. The old adage that when the student is ready, the teacher appears. That's what a mentor is. And so there needs to be proximity. There needs to be great communication. It's a very different way of learning. Personally, I think it's the way human beings were designed to learn. So Sharon, you've been doing this for a while. It's a big part of who you are today. But let's go back a little bit and just hit the high notes of your career because it's been very, very impressive. And then what you're doing today, and specifically what you're doing in the lives of men and women like Mike, who are Main Street capitalists looking to go next level.
Well, thanks. Russell, I really started my dedication on financial education, entrepreneurship education in December of 92 when my oldest son got into credit card debt. So I said, I was mad at him, but I was more mad at myself. I thought I taught him about money. And that's when I dedicated. And I'm as passionate about it today as I was then. And fast forward, I started Rich Dad Company with Robert. We did 15 books together, lots of books and audio tapes, and I thought that was my legacy. But in 2007, we were kind of on different personal missions. So I made the decision to leave, not knowing what was in front of me. And that was the year I got the call from President Bush asking to be on the President's Advisory Council. I served President Bush and Obama. And then that was also 2008. We know what was happening to the economy, and I got the call from the Napoleon Hill Foundation, which was a huge gift. I read Think and Grow Rich when I was 19, and so I've had the honor of helping reinvigorate his teachings and done multiple books with the foundation. But along the way, I kept working with business owners, and it was as if I could see things that they could not see for themselves. And my multiple businesses that I've started and grown, global brands, but also my time in public accounting when I saw how a lot of companies succeeded, and probably more importantly, how a lot of them failed. And so all that knowledge I can now turn and use, and I go into a situation like our relationship with Mike. I don't have the same emotional investment, but I have the spiritual investment, and I can go in and see opportunities that they may not have seen for themselves yet because they're so busy expanding the business. And Mike has been hugely successful. He's just such an incredible young man. He and his wife are they're faith centered. They're all about helping nonprofits. And they just like to help people, and I'm attracted to those kind of individuals. And he's at that tipping point in he's ready to go from friends and family, private investors to a syndication because he's got opportunities at Nashville and other opportunities in Austin. So it gets me excited when I see a business ready to just take off and scale. But then you have to make sure, do you have the systems in place that can scale? So I get excited about working with people like Mike.
Well, I find it so interesting that somebody who writes books and has been able to reach many millions of people through a one-way communication would step not down, but into the weeds of working with individuals where instead of making a mass impact kind of at a higher level, you're making a very profound impact at an individual level.
It's very rewarding to do both, Russell. Quite honestly, I didn't start this one-on-one mentoring until I lost my son. I lost my son 13 years ago. And it was when it took me several years to get to the point where I was excited about anything. I was like in a world of numbness, and I thought I would retire, and I got a lot of pushback from family and friends. And I even heard my son in my ear saying, "Get over it, Mom, there's more for you to do." And so a lot of my clients call me Mama Lechter, Mama Sharon, but it really helps fill a little bit of the hole that was left by losing a child. So and I love it. Once I started, my team now says my legacy is creating legacies, and I get the greatest joy. I get the greatest joy when somebody sends me an email that says they're financially free because of studying and employing my education, my information that I provide. I get as much joy from that, but I get tremendous joy seeing how a business owner can go to that next level and reach the element that they deserve. So I like being the legacy of creating other people's legacies.
Yeah, I mean, you and I have that in common.
Yes.
And I do believe you have to have both, right? You have to have the big net and you put the ideas out there, but then the stronger salmon, if you will, swim upstream and figure out how to get into a relationship and really take on the challenges of implementation. And that's where the mentorship role comes in. So Mike, you're there. Now, I don't know that much about your story. So I'm learning as we're doing this. This is a real time. We didn't do a lot of whole rehearsal. I got, kind of a feel for who you were and what your story was, but I want to draw it out. And really the purpose of anybody listening to this and watching this is to put themselves in your hero's journey, to try to understand who you were. We all get born, we go through whatever upbringing we go through. Nobody gets a perfect parent, nobody gets a perfect upbringing. It is what it is, right? And then one day you wake up and they hand you the keys to your life and you're an adult and you got to figure out what to do with it. Now we have this little transition called college, which, I jokingly call adult daycare, where you give kids a chance to kind of ease into adulthood. And I don't know, I didn't have that experience. I only put one of my kids through it. I think that the value proposition, as we talked about earlier, is a little bit broken. I did like you did. I turned 18. I went into business. I started working right away. I've preferred that path. But I presume you had some success along the way, and yet here you are, you've engaged with Sharon. So I'd like to understand, where you came from the time you were 18 and the success that you built before you engaged with her, and then the decision-making process you made as a more experienced, mature man, realizing I need help. Because not everybody, I think the most important thing, and Sharon, maybe we can comment at that in just a moment, to be a good mentee, you got to be coachable, right? Nobody wants to coach somebody who's not coachable. And I'm presuming because you're here, you're coachable. I think she just said some very nice things about you. But how did you get there from being an 18-year-old that said, I don't want to go to college, like I don't want to learn, I want to do, to, okay, now I'm ready to learn, but even though I've had success?
Absolutely. I grew up, I had a father that was in the Air Force, and he always instilled in me that you're supposed to work for everything that you have instead of just something being given to you. So from the age of, as soon as I could work, even a little bit younger than 16 years old, I started bagging groceries at a local grocery store. And from that point on, I've always had 2 or 3 jobs. From there, I actually went to start to work at Home Depot while I still worked at the grocery store as well. Learned a little bit about building materials, building products, really kind of liked that niche. Later on, started working for a larger building material company. And about this time was the time that I turned 18. Graduated from high school, and it was suggested at least to try to go to college. So I went to local community college. I think in total, I've only got about a year and a half worth of college, and some of that was done later in life. It just wasn't for me. I loved the aspect of seeing things built from scratch. So while I worked in the lumber yards and actually sold building materials, I got my third job, and I'm entering my early 20s at this point, and I was in the bar and restaurant industry. And some of those relationships that I created back then, I still have to this day. But what I found also is everything is based on relationships. And that's something that I learned at a young age. And I still have extremely good relationships with people that I had back as a kid, and those things are huge. And to this day, I do business based on relationships. I don't look for the grand slam, the one and done. This is something that I like doing business with individuals time and time again, and understanding that it's a complete journey and not just a race. At the age of 24, I had the opportunity to actually do a flip before flips were cool. Before they hopped on HGTV and all that stuff, I had the opportunity to get involved with a cousin of mine who had purchased a home and wanted to remodel it, and he had no clue how to do it. And I was figuring things out at that point. I knew that college wasn't necessarily for me, but I knew that I had a great ethic, and I knew that I could do whatever it was just to get the job done, and I would learn along the way. And that was definitely the time before YouTube as well. So, old school books and understanding and reading how to do things. That's how I did it. And I did several of those, and then had the opportunity to actually place a bid for the city of Austin to actually build a home. And they had a great program running. It was a portion of Austin called Austin Finance Corp. And they would do low income houses, and they would give grants, and they would actually hire you as a contractor to come in and build a home, and they would pay for it. We won several contracts over the years. We built a few hundred homes for the city of Austin, and that was kind of my springboard, if you would. And again, through this entire journey, being one of the youngest builders, what I did find a little difficult in my life was being taken seriously. And so I had to lean back to the relationships that I had made during the bar industry, friends of mine that I had grown up, because at this point we're all becoming adults, right? And it was leaning back on some of those relationships that helped me and the community be taken a little more seriously. So that was kind of the start of kind of my horizon and my journey.
So you're still below 30 at this stage of the game we're talking about. You've built hundreds of homes. You've got a reputation. I presume along the way you made some money. So you may be doing well financially, but we're still 20 years in the past from where you are right now. And when you had completed that, what was the next part of that journey? Are you married at this time? Do you have children? Are you trying to incorporate the work-life balance?
Yes, I did get married at an earlier age, right around that time frame when we were building homes for the city of Austin, and it was a marriage that I was in, and I had a son out of that, and we ultimately went our separate ways. I've been married now currently for 13 years to the love of my life, and she was previously married as well, and she had 2 boys from that marriage. So together we've got 3. It's kind of funny. I love to say they all drive, they feed themselves, and they do their own laundry. We're good. The youngest one's 20. We have a house all back to ourselves. Everything's awesome, and then we're still at that age where we can travel and things like that. So it's definitely at the end of the day been a journey. But to your point, yes, I continued my road in construction, if you would. And I had taken a step back even. I was approached by a very good friend of mine who is the CEO for Austin Habitat for Humanity. And she had called me and she said, hey, I'm looking for a construction director that can take us from 7 homes to 40 homes. And I said, awesome, I'll keep my eye open. If I do find someone, I'll definitely call you. And got off the phone and she called me back and she was like, I was talking about you, so I didn't even notice that. And again, this was a relationship that I had back from the city of Austin. She saw how I performed there. She had left the city of Austin to take over the position at Habitat as the CEO. So I loved the idea. I worked through several misconceptions that I had of Austin Habitat. I thought that they just gave you homes, and that's not the fact at all. You actually have to buy the home. Now, granted, you may have a 0 or a very low interest rate, but you still had to work to attain the home several hours before you even qualified to get one for yourself. But then you still had to purchase a home. So looking at that framework, that really, and being involved in that nonprofit world opened my eyes to something different and something more that gave me purpose. As a young individual, when you start to make money, it's all well and good and it's fun at that point, but you don't necessarily have the little fella in your head that's going, what are you doing this for? And so that's where a love for nonprofits and actually giving back came to fruition to me, at least in my early 30s.
Okay. So you said the word purpose. I think that's really important. I'm sure, Sharon, as you spend time working with people, I know me, when I mentor people, the first thing that comes out on the table is let's talk about purpose. And so we already know that he's a purpose-driven Main Street capitalist, and we'll come back to your purpose, your current purpose, and the things you're working on. But Sharon, I'd like you to comment on the role of purpose in entrepreneurism, even in investing, and how you work with your clients specifically to discover that, to pull that out. How do you help people find it? Is it important? And if it is important, how do you develop it and build around it?
Well, having purpose is what helps you get through the dry spells and the valleys that you have, because we all have them. But the most successful businesses solve a problem or serve a need. And if your mission is solving a problem and serving a need, you're going to be successful if you continue focusing on that and make, the mission is more important than the profit. All right. And if you focus on the mission and you do it well, the profit will come. And I think it's very important. We all have to figure out, why are we here? We talk about find your why. Well, find your purpose. And that purpose is where your passion can be employed. And that passion is what helps you get through those negative times. Because we all have those oops moments and where fear takes over. And the way you get through the fear is to focus on your passion and what your purpose is.
You know, I think that I'm sensing that you're a very authentic person.
Thank you.
And I have an acronym for my core values, which is the word ACTS. And the A is authenticity, C is contribution, T is tenacity, S is stewardship. It just helps me remember, like when I'm kind of doing an inventory check, if I have my head screwed on straight or my heart pointed in the right direction. But I do know many people in marketing use purpose as a marketing tool. They use it to identify with an affinity group. And I think anybody paying any attention over the last few years have watched marketing departments align with purposes that were completely offensive to their customers and end up having, you know, their rear ends handed to them on a silver platter in terms of stock price, in terms of employment, customer loyalty. Bad PR. You know, they say all PR is good. I don't know. I don't know if all press is good. But Sharon, when you onboard somebody, how can you tell, or do you, are they the real deal? Are they authentic? Because you get somebody who's going to switch their purpose or their mission, whichever way the wind blows, because they're trying to ride a wave. My experience has been that blows up.
Well, we go through an onboarding process of interviewing. I have a team that interviews people. We do a entrepreneurial questionnaire as far as, you know, what is it that what's your purpose, all right? How do you get clients? What's your history? What's been your revenues? What have been your sticking points, your valleys, and what do you hope to get from me and my team? Right, so that I know what their expectations are coming into it. But there are clients that we don't take because they're not. We've quickly determined they're not coachable. You know, you'll say, "Well, have you?" Because I always ask questions. Have you thought of this? Oh, yeah, yeah. You know, oh, well, maybe we should think about this. Oh, I already did that. You know, and it's very quick. You can identify somebody that they're just not coachable, and they don't have an openness to new ideas, and that's fine. You know, God bless them, but it's not a good use of my time if I know I'm not going to make an impact. And so I think it's really just having that interview process and that time. You know, we just had a business retreat at my ranch, and there were two people that I did not allow to come because I knew their culture would not go with everybody else's culture. And I'm always very protective of me and the environment we're in. I want it to be a safe space. I want it to be where people can nurture and support each other. And so I think as a mentor, you have to be fiercely protective of the environment you have your mentees in.
And as a business owner,
Yeah.
I'm sure you're not a one-man band anymore, Mike.
No, those days, fortunately, are gone. You know, of wearing every single different hat that you can, and you learn. And one of the things that Sharon says is an openness to learn and to be taught. You also have to have the openness to understand when there's someone else that can do a job better than you can. Right at the end of the day, when you start growing in business, and you see that and you hire that person that can do that job 10 times better than you, you may know how to do it, but they know how to do it 10 times better. And you regain that time that you used to spend, your business can grow. And it takes a long time, or at least it did for me in my younger years, you know, being a stubborn kid, to look beyond myself, to look beyond my ego and to go, how can I make this better, not only for myself, but for all people that are involved?
Yeah, and I think that really dovetails into what I would consider to be the next little question or topic that I want to discuss, because we've tracked your career from childhood all the way up until you've got a successful business going, you've got your family, you're going through some struggles, you're realizing, hey, I can't do this all by myself and I need to learn to ask for help. And in the beginning, it's trusting your employees to do a good job. And then you have to change, right? You can't be the person you were when you are getting things done, when you're making investments and helping other people be productive. But at some point along this journey, you made a decision to bring Sharon into your life. Talk about that point where you realized that you needed her. Maybe you didn't know who she was. Maybe you weren't looking for her. Maybe somebody saw you and said, hey, you should consider this. But how did that happen? How did you know that you needed her?
You know, a lot of times you don't, a lot of times you just don't know what you need. And it has to be pointed out to you, and you have to be open enough to receive that, right? Many years I thought everything was okay until little things or little holes in the bucket show up that you thought were okay. The presentation of something in front of you a lot of times is that wake up call, that light that goes off.
Called pain.
That too, very much
God gives
so.
you pain so you could get the rock out of your shoe or the attitude out of your heart or the thought, the bad idea out of your brain, whatever it is.
Yes, exactly. And one of those things, and it goes back to I never really had someone that I went to. So I oftentimes just tried to figure it out myself. And at the same time was also and have been and still am a mentor to several small business owners, that guys that are in their 20s. And so I still look at myself as this kid that's trying to figure it out, teaching someone else. And then it took me a while to step back and go, hold on a second. If I'm doing all this and trying to teach other individuals that they have to have open minds and to fill the gaps that they need, where am I doing that? And how can I be better? And how can I actually serve these kids that I'm trying to help mentor as well? And is that hypocritical if I'm doing that and I'm not trying to search elsewhere? So that's kind of where it started. And Sharon's got a good way. And, you know, we had been together before that anyway, socially. And so she drops all these little nuggets all the time. And that's when you start thinking to yourself, you know, well, what am I doing wrong? That really made sense. Can I actually receive more of that openly? And how can I improve with that? Why don't I step into that student role as well?
And so you made the decision to do that. And it seems that you're happy with the decision at this point. So let's talk a little bit about working together and what that looks like, because I'm a big proponent of what you're doing. I believe that human beings were designed to grow perpetually and that you always want to be a mentor and have a mentor. And maybe sometimes more than one for different areas. And none of us can get our 10,000 hours in every aspect of life, to use that, you know, and whether anybody really gets 10,000, I don't know. But there's certainly people who have life experiences, skill sets, networks, relationships, whatever it is that allow us. And you talked many times earlier about the role of relationships, and that's part of what a mentor brings too. And you're sitting here, because I didn't know who you were, but I get a text from Sharon, whom I respect, and she says, you need to meet this guy. He should be on your show. I'm like, done. If Sharon says that, I'm going to do it. And it's been great so far. And I think we have a little bit more to go here, and I'm excited about that. But talk a little bit about how you two work together. And you can kind of, we don't have to take turns. You guys can step on each other. But I'd just like to hear you talk a little bit about the working
Yeah,
relationship.
well, I want to interject the fact Mike is extremely successful in his own right before we started working together. So I don't want to, he is just doing great. But he's got an incredible opportunity to truly explode to the next level. So he's very, very successful. He could say what he's doing. He's got a very loyal band of investors that stay with him from project to project. But he's at that tipping point in his business where he needs more institutional money. He needs, you know, larger funds to be able to do the projects that are coming to him. How exciting that is when you're not out there seeking projects, they're coming to you, and you have the ability to discern, can I do this project? Can I do this project? Yes, but in order to do this project, I need, you know, 10 million or 50 million, not the normal project flow that I've done. So he saw the opportunity to move to that next level. And so creating the systems, creating the presentations to go to that next level, and I'll use the word of sophistication in investors, is not a comment on his current. He's got some highly successful billionaires that supporting him. But I think it's really important to understand that you want that next level of presentation ability. And one of the biggest things that I do for my clients is introduce them to people. We are here because I introduced them to you. So power of association is a huge element in everything that I do. Is how can we expand your reach? Who can help you get to the next level? And it's really exciting to me to see the opportunities that we have to expose Mike to other groups of investor money, as well as an opportunity to put the systems in so that he can create that next level. And just in our conversations, he's talking about a software need that he sees in his own business that could be huge in the construction industry. And I just get so excited because that's the kind of thing I can help him create reality. And that's intellectual property. That's my gig, right? Creating a system that he can utilize and efficiently in his own business, but something that every builder in the country would be beneficial. And that's a huge step in the right direction. So,
Well, when I get out of the host seat, I mean, I want to talk to both you guys because I think that there's a lot of things that we could probably do together, and we can have that conversation offline. But Mike, let's hear it from your perspective, right? You're already successful. You decided to take the humility pill and say, if I want to go next level, I'm going to need help. I don't know if you shopped around, if you decided that this was just serendipitous and we're going to go here, but it seems like it's working for you. But what is it like from your perspective, working with Sharon? What are maybe some things that you've experienced? Maybe she doesn't even know that you're like, wow, this is really, really amazing. And I've never even had a chance to tell her about that.
Yeah. To Sharon's point, we do great. We've been very successful. My wife and I have a bandwidth of X. And what we were doing is we were building several projects, selling everything, and actually going to buy income producing property. And one day we stopped and we kind of scratched our head and we went, okay, we're taking our profit and going to buy something else. We've already filled kind of a missing middle in our market, because what I like to do is I always like to start with a product and what's the problem with that product? How can you fix it? And how can you make it better? So I've got a lot of friends and I've dealt a little bit in multifamily, and there's benefits to multifamily. But one of the disadvantages is you have two exits. You either refinance to get your money out or you sell. That's it. And especially with interest rates the way that they are today, it's a little bit more difficult to do. So I basically took the widget of the single family home and treated it like multifamily. And the way that we did that was we would go in and buy half a city block in a desirable area that everybody wanted to be in, a downtown area. We would rezone it and we would design micro communities. And the reason why we did that is because it was larger, much larger a project than the small custom home builder could do, and too small for the volume builder to do.
The sweet spot.
The sweet spot.
Where the opportunity and margins are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if I'm buying, 20 windows for one residence, now I'm buying 250 windows for multiple homes. And then it only made sense to control. If you can control as much in your business that's actually a production type model, the better off you do. So for instance, we do all of our infrastructure construction as well. So we do streets, underground utilities, things like that, and also the vertical construction. So it then dawned on us, if we're going to build 12 homes, why don't we sell 8 and keep 4? And we started to align with other like-minded investors who could actually reuse the same funds over and over again, because again, all debt gets paid back, all equity gets paid back, and then you're left with an asset that you make reoccurring income from, and that's where it made sense. So it was taking a part of multifamily and single family. So we've done several communities like that. And so there's proof in concept done. And then there became a point where we were like, we need to take this to other markets that are very similar to Austin. You have to have
Nashville would be the obvious one.
Exactly.
My daughter lives in Austin, and the two towns she was considering living in were either going to be Austin or Nashville. and
Yep.
they chose Austin, and she's still here
Yep.
or there to this day.
Yeah, and there's probably certain reasons behind that. It's a younger city. It's a very health and wellness based city. Tremendous food. We're big foodies, so even when we travel, you've got to have a good food scene in a destination spot in a place that people will always want to be in. So by taking this model to different areas, filling that missing middle in these different markets, helping investors out, allowing them to utilize only the same funds that they may want to over and over again, and they leave with an asset, making income per, having mailbox money, almost tax free at times because of accelerated depreciation. It was this thing that we have created that we feel that we can take on a massive national schedule. But as an entrepreneur, you get on this teeter totter, right? And there's that time to where you can stay on one side or you jump to the other. And we were at that point to jump to another. And it didn't take long for me to understand that I could not do that on my own. And again, through other relationships is how we met Sharon. And I've seen what she's done in the past with other individuals. And again, association of individuals is huge. I always want to be in a room with someone smarter than myself to help me improve, but more or less, how can I help them as well? It's got to be a give and take. And that's the basis of all relationships. And that's what I think I've actually gotten with Sharon. And that's what ultimately led us in that direction and chose Sharon. I wasn't looking for anybody. It came to me and it was very natural.
Well, I want to unpack some of that in the time that we have remaining, because I think there's a lot of lessons here. And the whole purpose of this show is to give inspiration to people on Main Street, especially younger people who maybe feel like, hey, the economy is broken, the opportunities aren't there, the brand promise of go to school, get a job, make good money, live below your means, save, invest for the long term in a well-diversified portfolio of stocks and bonds, ride the inflation wave. If we change our system, it's going to matter more. And then just, I think, what I call the monopolies that kind of operate at the higher echelon to a degree at the expense of Main Street. You're a Main Street guy. I'm a Main Street guy. To me, this is about empowering Main Street, especially next generation. And so for a younger person who can see themselves in your hero's journey, 18 years old, hey, have a good work ethic, right? Your dad taught you have a good work ethic. Do that. Number two is you got yourself around a situation where you were starting to see people do good things with what they were doing. The Habitat for Humanity. There was one other one you talked about prior to that, but the idea that it's more than just making money, it's making a difference, and those two are not mutually exclusive. The third thing that I heard you say is the idea of realizing that at some point you have to trust other people. In the beginning, it's employees, and you become a teacher and a mentor. And then at some point realizing you got to eat your own cooking. And, if you're going to be a mentor and you're going to model being a good mentee, you got to have a mentor yourself. And then picking out someone where there's an alignment of purpose and values and mission. And then you ended with something which I thought was profound and is so easily lost by people who get discouraged about the problems that they see. Entrepreneurs just lick their chops when they see problems because they know the flip side of every problem is an opportunity. In this case, you said, okay, we've got a problem over here in these communities. We've got a capital over here, or investors have a problem in their investments. And we can actually create a product that solves both problems and bring both parties together for their mutual benefit. I spend time specifically coaching syndicators and teaching them this same exact process and getting them to understand that if you can understand the problem that the counterparty has and bring them to a solution. And I think right now, people who are heavily exposed to Wall Street, they have a bit of a problem. It's been a fun ride, but those rides come to an end. And when they do, it's in spectacular fashion. And I think that Main Street is going to wake up to understanding the value of investing in Main Street investing in Main Street. And that's one of my personal missions. And so I think you have kind of crack the code in a little niche inside of that. And so uh, before I invite people to figure out how they can reach out to you and get involved, whether they want to be an investor in some of your projects and provide capital, whether they like to live in one of your communities, or get involved with Sharon in mentoring or whatever it is there anything in that summary that you think really stands out, either one of you, that I miss? Because I'm just riffing off the top of my head.
Well, I'd like to add, because I think one of the spiritual ideas that Mike and Bristol, his wife, are pulling together is the idea of community. And we live here in Arizona. The city of walls, right? You live in a neighborhood, you don't even know your neighbors, and they're bringing back that sense of belonging and having a small neighborhood there that you can really get to know your neighbors. And the fact that as a builder, he's also your neighbor because he's maintaining ownership in that community. So it's a sense of what they're going to do, they're going to make sure is right because they own properties here too. And those two elements, I think, are very strong in his favor in building those communities and making them from a marketable perspective and somebody wanting to buy into it, because it gives you a higher level of confidence that you're buying into something that is heart-centered.
Well, I'm so glad you brought that up, because we were talking before we got on camera about another friend that I have that just goes out and rehabs single-family homes, but flips a few, keeps a few, and does property management only for himself and the people who buy the houses that he flips, because he believes in the product so much that he keeps it himself, and he knows that he can manage that product profitably in that marketplace. And he's built a big company. This is just a dude that, was a skateboarding kid that figured out he liked to flip houses, and has turned it into this amazing business. And he's great with relationships. Everybody loves him. But when you know that the person who's managing the property, this isn't a transaction, it's a relationship. You buy a property from a real estate agent, and I like real estate agents, so don't get me wrong, but they have a period of time where they're involved with you in that property, and it's a transaction. They're going to get in, they're going to get out. And so if the rents need to be a little bit more flowery than they really are, if the property needs to maybe be a little bit better condition than it really is, and you get in a little bit off more than you maybe could chew, the agent doesn't have to deal with that. The property manager does. And so I always like to have the property manager involved early. But in this case, you're acting as both the builder, you're acting as an investor, you're acting as a property manager, and to a degree as a neighbor. So just let's kind of get into the little bit of the weeds of the project itself. As an investor is coming in to look at your deal, understanding all of these different components, and you're sitting down and you're presenting your offering to someone, saying, this is who we are, this is what we do, this is how it works, and this is how it works for you. What does all that look like?
Absolutely. One of the things that I had mentioned earlier is the more that you can control in-house, the better off the final product will be. And it only made sense, when my wife and I, like I said, were scratching our heads going, why are we taking our profits, going to buy something else that's an income producing property when we should just keep what we built? We know what are behind the walls. We know how it was built. We know where everything is. Why don't we manage that? And why don't we service our investors and ourselves and our kids more than anything? And the reason why we did this, and we call it our legacy portfolio, because I no longer was concerned with myself. I was concerned about my kids, my grandkids, similarly with the investors that we serve, right? So what we're doing is for the future. So what better way to keep that in the best shape humanly possible than to manage that yourself and hold it close to you and treasure that legacy that can be passed down
So you
through
got
years to
real
come
assets in the real world, serving real people and generating real income.
for years to come.
And I think that Main Street needs to wake up to that's what investing is. It isn't buying pieces of paper or claims on other people's wealth for valuations that are completely ridiculous, hoping somebody's going to come along later with more inflation and buy that same thing and that same stream of income from you, but pay a higher price. It's a difference between what I call, I'll let you do the phonetics of the acronym, but I call it buy low, sell high trading, something that comes out of the back end of a bowl,
Absolutely.
and versus poo,
Yeah.
which is productivity of others. And I think that we are moving towards an environment where people who have been bored by cash flow, by people who have been bored by the predictability of what you call mailbox money, and get enamored of the sexiness of these companies that have these crazy business models and technologies and factors that most Main Street investors couldn't possibly comprehend or understand what they're buying, and devolved investing into really what equates to gambling. And I'm not saying people shouldn't invest in stocks. I'm just saying most people do not have the sophistication to do it. And right now we are having a fundamental shift in our economy. And if it continues, I think the real opportunity is going to be on Main Street. So you're sitting in a seat on Main Street. You're looking to raise capital. You're picking these markets. I don't know how much attention you pay to macroeconomics. We had a little bit of a conversation about people in the paper asset world just fixating on what's the Fed going to do and what's the government going to do, fiscal policy and monetary policy, or monetary policy, fiscal policy, respectively. But I feel like trade policy is really going to start to show up. Does that factor into any of your decision making? Are you seeing any? Because we've only been in this new administration for about a year and a half. This aggressive trade policy has only begun. So I don't know that it hasn't even been a year yet. It's only been 10 months. Is that showing up on Main Street for you yet? Has the tariff policies impacted you positively or negatively? And all answers are good. I'm not here cheerleading for anybody, but I'm just a big believer in Main Street. I'm just curious what you're experiencing.
Yeah, it has shown up a little bit, just a small amount in softwoods. We use a lot of pine in Texas, and we also use a lot of whitewood that typically comes from Canada. So some of those prices incrementally will come up a little bit, but it's all in how you kind of hedge that bet. And even with the model that we're working with, we took some of that into consideration due to COVID. And so in sheets of plywood where we used to pay $9 a sheet, we were having to pay $42 to $45 for that exact piece of plywood. And so when we build these communities and we understand that we're going to be left with a certain amount of assets or units that are free and clear, it gave us the answer and the solution. Oftentimes we'll get, what happens if the market crashes and prices of homes plummet? Well, in our original pro forma, if we look at it clearly and conservatively on sales exits, if we've got to lower the price of a home, we lower it, and maybe we only keep 3 homes. Similarly, on the rental side, what happens if rents go down? Okay, we'll lower the rent a couple $100. We're not making as much money, but again, we don't have a creditor, and there's several other aspects of that we don't have. So it gives us that free flow to be able to adjust our final product. But what gave me that inspiration really was COVID and what the prices of commodities did. So we kind of thought about that and backed into the model that we currently do. So I'm really interested to see if it does still affect. What we have found more than anything is labor costs have gone up more than material. And I'm a firm believer, even if I had to do it all over again, I probably would have been an electrician. And again, we've become a society of convenience, right? No one knows how to change your oil. No one knows how to barely change a light bulb, let alone can they change a light fixture. There are certain industries that no matter what, you will always need. You'll always need a plumber. You'll always need an electrician. You'll always need an HVAC guy. You'll always need food. You will always have a job. And at the end of the day, those trades and that knowledge can never be taken away from you, much like many other businesses can. So I'm a firm believer in trades. And that's why we'll stay in them.
So to summarize that, and I think there's some good stuff there, especially for our younger folks, is that there is opportunities in the trades. If the labor is high, it's because the labor is tight in that area. You don't have enough of those kind of people, or they'd be competing for those jobs. A smart person would come in and do that job and then quickly turn it into that job into a business, much like what you did. And so I think there's a path to entrepreneurship through the trades, especially if we do get this injection of money coming in. I did a presentation at the Best Ever Conference. Encourage you to check it out in March, beginning of March of 2024. So it was, or 2025, this year. It was the new administration had only been in place for like 6 weeks. And I broke down what I thought the game plan was going to be. And in summary, it was lower energy costs, lower taxes, lower regulation, lower interest rates, basically attack it the way a builder was, lower all the components of costs for the things that I don't care about, and focus my ability to increase costs in two areas, labor and velocity. And so I'm actually happy to hear that labor is going up, especially in an inflationary environment, and the cost of plywood, for example, or energy or commodities potentially having a chance to go down because we're beginning to open up domestic production. And part of that is rooted in the tariff policy, which is more leveling the playing field. I'm not an anti-free trade guy, but you have to put free and fair, in my opinion, kind of in the same basket. And so these are fundamental changes that will affect Main Street in a lot of ways. A big part of doing this show is to help people be aware of what those changes are. There's a yin and a yang, there's a good and a bad, right? If like AI, right now, everybody's worried about AI. I can't get a job because AI is going to do the job. Yes, but you could create a business and employ AI, and now you have a business. And so there's always going to be that other side. It's funny, I read a book by Andy Grove. You remember Andy Grove? He was one of the CEOs of Intel. This was when the internet was first coming. And he was watching it very carefully, and he was talking about the threats and the opportunities. And they were literally concerned about the future of industry because of the internet. And of course, it set off a big economic boom. Well, we could go on, and I would love to, because there's so much more to talk about. I'll give you both a chance to have your final thoughts, and Sharon, we'll start with you, and then let people know how they can find you.
Well, thank you so much, Russell. Appreciate you doing this for us. Yes, my website is SharonLechter.com, SharonLechter.com. You can email me, info@SharonLechter.com. I have LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, X, which used to be, I always call it Twitter. So I'm at the old school here. Please reach out to me. Love it. We have absolutely lots of different information to support you, and we're here to serve you. So that's my goal, is to help you improve your financial life. And I will add, one of the things I want to underscore is Mike is an investor in all of his projects. He's not just a builder. He's a builder, and he actually invests. And sometimes he's the largest investor in his projects. So he's right there with you. He's going to make sure he makes money so you'll make money. So check him out and see how you can support his projects.
And you and I are going to probably be doing some stuff together. We have a very similar mission, and I have some opportunities where I could use some help. And so I'm happy to be here to help you. I think this is great. Mike, how do people find you?
Excellent. Again, I appreciate it, and it was an honor to actually be here. You can find me. Our building website is actually Set Studio, and Set is SETT studio.com. You can find me there. Again, on all socials too. My last name, just because it stands out like a sore thumb, is SPECIALE, and definitely unique. And I would love to talk to you. Sharon also said that I'm a serial entrepreneur. We invest in several different other companies as well. We're in the health and wellness industry, activewear industry, other building industries. So I love helping people as well. And we would love to hear from you. And I do appreciate, again, you having us on.
Well, I appreciate both of you being here. If you have any questions or feedback on the show, just send an email to feedback@mainstreetcapitalist.com. And I'm sure I will continue to have a relationship with these lovely people, and we'll be happy to get those questions answered for you. Thanks so much for watching. Thank you guys for being here. Really appreciate it.